Hey guys, me and Huxley are back with another quick and easy video. Unfortunately, it's not going to be a very long one because I am super busy right now. I've been meaning to make this video for quite a long time now. I wanted to show more of my living room plants. Hux? What is going on? You okay, Hux? All right, don't mind what's happening in the background. I've been meaning to make this video, which is to show a lot. Oh my God, start over. I wanted to show some fun alternatives to trailing plants that are often shown, I guess, or often sold. Kind of just show you some very low maintenance plants in terms of being able to just kind of display them, water them, give them light, but you don't really have to fuss over them. You don't have to prune them back a lot. They're really good decor. They have nice, like, they're a little bit more funky, eye-catching, add a little bit more interest and structure to your shelf. So really quick disclaimer, when I say low maintenance, I don't mean low light. So actually none of the plants I'm showing you today are low light plants or low light tolerant plants. So in order to keep them growing nicely and have them growing at all, you're gonna need to give them some light. So they're good if you have like a shelf with grow lights attached to them, or if you have a nice windowsill, or if you have a light with good sunny exposure. So for that reason, I'm going to be giving you light readings on these plants. If you haven't heard of it already, this is the LTH meter by Houseplant Journal. So I will link in the description. I purchased this with my own money and I've been using it quite a lot to kind of understand the light levels that my plants are getting and diagnose problems with my plants that don't seem to be growing very well, and also understanding the light levels for the plants that are growing well. I'll also link Charmaine's video in the description where she kind of uses this on all of her plants and shows you the features of the light meter. I'm not going to go through all the features or anything, but this meter has been so fun. I'm turning it on right now. You can read light in terms of foot candles or lux. I've been using foot candles. It'll tell you the temperature and the humidity. So light, temperature, humidity. This is the current reading of the room. You're getting 34 foot candles, 38% humidity, about 20 degrees Celsius. Just because I feel like it'll be helpful for you guys if I include light readings for each of the plants, so you can know if it's going to be good for decorating in whatever space you have in mind. So yeah, that's it. So I have 5 plants that are trailing, and I wanted to add one more at the end as a good honorable mention because I feel like this is such a good decorative plant. So let us just get started. So this first plant is the reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place, and I don't even know the name of it. This is a Ripsalis no, it's not a Bassifera, but we thought it was a Bassifera. This plant came from Charmaine. If you ever like look at her living room shelf, she has this massive, like super bushy, thick, dense one growing off her shelf. And then she had this little like separated portion. She was growing on a piece of cork bark on her wall, and it was too high maintenance. She had to like water it way too often. So she kind of took that off, gave it to me. I've been growing it in soil for probably like a year and a half now, and it's grown so much. I think it was probably like this long when I first got it, and it was a lot less full. This one has been so easy going, and it doesn't get a ton of light. It only gets a lot of light right here at the base, but the long strands that kind of trail off the shelf get like very little light. So the low end of that light spectrum reading spectrum, the spectrum of numbers that I'm putting here, that is the light that like this portion of the plant is getting. And on the high end, it's gonna be like back here. The back of the plant, like, so it sits on the shelf like this. So the back end of the plant actually gets a little bit more light than the front end, because the front end faces my living room, which gets very little light. And then the back end is facing the shelf behind it, which has a grow light. So it doesn't have light very evenly across the plant. I love this plant. I have no idea what it's called. If you guys know what kind of Ripsalis this is, please let me know. I think Bassifera is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it might have different forms, but this is way skinnier than I think Bassifera actually is. Charmaine is the reason why I have Ripsalis in the first place. I actually don't think I've ever purchased Ripsalis myself. All of my Ripsalises are from her. She's forced me to grow a lot of them because she knows I love them, and she was right, and this is why we're best friends. This looks so great trailing off of shelf because it's such a nice vibrant green, but it has just a really thick texture, and it trails so readily. It wants to trail. That's its growing pattern, so it's going to readily grow like this, and it grows quite fast. It is like a succulent plant, but it's not a desert plant, so it does take water very similarly to like my aroids. So I water this probably about once every 10 days or so. It's in like a dense soil mix. It's basically like bagged soil mix with like fewer amendments that I would normally put. It's a little bit more dense because the roots are so hairline. They're just like little wispy little hairs, and it does dry out quite quickly. Like I watered this maybe a week ago, and it's probably due for another water soon. And it's growing in no drainage with a little like a layer at the bottom. And in general, this is just like a plant that I don't have to think about. I just have to water it. I water it with my feed solution, which is TPS1 at the moment. I never have to worry about pruning it back. It's had mealies actually, and I treated it once and it just went away, knock on wood. And in general, if you just want like a really interesting looking plant trailing off of a shelf and looking in general just like really hairy and something you just like want to run your fingers through, I highly recommend this one. And I have it potted more kind of like a ponytail, so it's all kind of spilling out the front here just to make sure I like maintain that fullness. So if you can get your hands on something like this, I really think that this would be a great shelf plant for nice good light. It would look great on like a little stack of books next to some decor knickknacks. I feel like those of you in Europe are gonna have way better access to cool ripsalis than we do here. I just don't know why. It's just not super in cultivation here, but I think all the cool ones come from Europe. Maybe one day I'll try to like import some. We've been talking about this for a really long time, like getting some imports coming in from Europe, but then I don't know, we just never got around to it. So I'll just back up here so you can see the whole thing, and just like imagine just like a few of these, just like a big curtain down a white wall. It would look so good. So yeah, that's the first one. So this next one is also a ripsalis, but it's not quite so big. This is my Ripsalis Paradoxia. This one was a cutting from Charmaine, and I had a really rough time with rooting this, but once it got rooted, it's been really easy going. I got it as like 2 little cuttings, maybe about this big, and I rooted it in pond, although in hindsight, I probably should have rooted in water and then transferred it to pond, because another Paradoxia minor that I have rooted really easily in water, and it's still in water right now. I'm trying to rehab it from a lot of root loss. But anyways, this one is probably my favorite ripsalis of all time. It's just like my specimen is still quite small, but like it's so incredibly cool. Like every single joint looks a little bit different, and it twists and it branches, and I think it grows fairly quickly as well under higher light conditions. So Ripsalis Paradoxia, in my experience, does require quite a lot of light. I tried to grow the Paradoxia minor in this room that I'm sitting in with no grow lights or anything, and it just rotted. It just started to like mush at the base. I had to chop it back up and reroot it in water, and now it's back under grow lights in my living room shelf. So I wouldn't recommend growing this unless you have a good amount of natural light or under grow lights. But if you have the light, it doesn't need much humidity. It doesn't need to be super warm either. And you can water it like a tropical plant. So just when the substrate is dry, give it a good drink, and it's gonna grow so cool. And the thing is, like, it will branch off readily on its own. So it's not gonna just keep growing like one single strand, and you'd have to like chop it and prop it back in the pot in order to make it look fuller. It will kind of naturally do that. So you can see like this one's branching off. This one is branching off. So I'm looking for a full pot of this because I don't have the patience to get this to grow out as full as the other Ripsalis, but I haven't been able to find a full pot of this one. I've only been able to find Ripsalis Paradoxia minor, which is a little bit skinnier. I'll pop a photo right here. It's not quite as angled and not quite as thick as this one. This one is my favorite of the two. It just doesn't look real. It looks like it's carved out of rock. You know what I mean? And then sometimes on Instagram, I'll come across pictures of people with like really huge long Ripsalis just trailing out, and it's like this big curtain of this plant. It looks so stunning. So these are my 2 favorite Ripsalis that I own. Hopefully I'll be able to find more of this plant that I can combine it together. But yeah, if you're in Europe, I envy you because I'm pretty sure you can get this really easily. Next 2 are Hoyas. So the thing about Hoyas that I find super annoying, I'm sure a lot of people do, is that they vine all over the place and they want to climb and they like twirl around and they get all tangled, and you could have like the plant here and like the vine extending all the way the fuck across the room. So it's not my favorite to grow on a shelf in and amongst other plants unless it's a kind of Hoya that stays pretty compact. So the next two I'm going to show you don't vine all over the place, and they are totally fine growing in like a trailing pattern. So this first Hoya is like probably one of my favorite Hoyas of all time. Likely my favorite Hoya of all time. And that's Hoya compacta. This is not like a funky weird plant in the sense that like nobody knows about it. It just looks so cool and it adds so much texture, and the color is like nice and dark and just, it's so good. And I love that it wants to grow compact. It won't vine like crazy and then fill in with leaves. It's just gonna grow vine, leaf, that kind of thing. So I've had this plant maybe about 2 years. It's grown a good amount for me and it's flowered like a million times. This is my most, oh my God, there's a mealybug on here. That's fine. It's fine. It has mealy, oh my God. Look at this mother. Oh my God. Ah, there's more. Oh my gosh, it's all over the place. So I'm just holding mealybugs next to my face. That's fine. This plant has had mealybugs. Like this shelf that I'm pulling all these plants off has been dealing with mealybugs for like 2 years, a year and a half. I've been able to kind of maintain the mealybugs. I've never been able to fully eradicate them, and now that they're in the compacta, I feel like there's no fully eradicating mealybugs from compacta. But oh my gosh, it is freaking everywhere. It's a testament to this plant that it's not showing any signs of stress. And also, mealybugs are super annoying, but I've never really been able to see mealybug damage, and I haven't had a plant die from mealybugs, so they're just really gross to me. I don't really well, I mean, obviously I wish they weren't there, but they're not as bad to me as spider mites. Anyways, this plant, I think the coolest Hoya to have growing on a shelf and having trailing down. Is this not the coolest kind of structure in a Hoya? It's so cool. This is one of the plants that got me into plants in the first place. I don't even remember where I saw this. It might have been Plantarina was showing this in a video, and I was like, holy crap, I need one right now. I think forever it will be my favorite Hoya. Like the leaves, individual leaves are not very cool. It's when you have this long strand of it that's really, really cool. So I will be holding on to this forever. I hope to maybe one day like find another few long vines and add to it and just make it look fuller. This looks so good on a shelf. And also the variegated versions, the alba marginata, or what they call it, regalis, is my favorite of the variegated versions. I think that one looks so cool because when the white overlays with the green, sometimes you get that gray tone and it looks really silvery as a vine, and it looks so pretty. If one day I can get a really full pot of that, that would be like mwah, so dreamy. So I think of all the Hoyas, this is definitely one that's great for displaying. I mean, it doesn't need to be growing in a cabinet or anything. It needs quite a bit of light. So of the readings that I'm showing, the light is concentrated at the top here. At that light level, it does produce a little bit of sun stress. You can see this like pinkiness and a little bit of paleness. And then down here is the lower end of that number range. So the leaves are a lot greener, a lot darker. I think it's pretty fair to assume that the whole plant can grow under the lower light levels, which is not even super low light. What was it? Around 100 foot candles. So I don't know if it will maybe get a bit leggier, maybe. I've never tried it fully under those conditions. When I was growing it under 100 foot candles in like a darker corner of my house, near to a window, but not super exposed to the window, it just rotted and died. So probably somewhere in like the 150, 200 range would produce really nice growth. So yeah, my all-time favorite Hoya, and she's going to get alcohol swabbed and rinsed down as soon as I finish filming. The second Hoya also trails super nicely, and it is not a crazy viner, Hoya linearis, and she is looking so good lately. She also got hit with mealy bugs. I haven't seen any on her in a little while, I don't think, but I wouldn't doubt that she has mealies. Oh no, yep, there's mealies on her, yep. This one gets the least amount of light compared to everything else I'm showing you because it is a little bit lower, so it sits farther away from the lights above it, and she's really traily, so this part of the plant gets almost no light. It's probably like 50-foot candles or something. She's looking so full though. I grew this from a single node probably like 2 years ago. I was trying to root it in moss because I had no idea what to do with Hoyas. And then once it went into pond, it just exploded. And I've propped it so many times, and I gave Charmaine a cutting or a few cuttings for her birthday last year because her linearis died. I've cut it like more times than I can count, and it's looking so long. So the way that I prop and fill out this pot was just like, when it gets too long, I'll take cuttings at just like different lengths. Obviously you don't want to do like a bowl cut down the middle, and then I let that callus, I let that sap kind of like dry off. So I like to take these tweezers that I have that have like a really pointed point, like it's not like the like eyebrow tweezers, and then I just like stick them in the substrate and kind of like open up a little hole, and then I just slide the new cutting in, and then I keep the substrate a little bit wetter in that time for a few weeks, just let it root. But that method has been working really well for me, and I've been able to get it from like one really long strand to like all these strands, and they've been branching off sometimes. And I also have it potted more like a ponytail, and it's just such a great plant to trail off of a shelf because it wants to grow in that trailing pattern. So as long as you have the light for it, it's just so delicate and so fuzzy, and it's one of those plants that is so enjoyable to like walk by and just like run your hands through. The same I can say for Paradoxia. Once you have like a full curtain of it, the Ripsalis, that's not a Bassifera, that one's really great to run your hands through. It's just like very soothing and like very comforting kind of feeling. And this one especially because the leaves are slightly fuzzy, they have a really nice tactile feeling to them. I mean, when it's small, it doesn't look like much, but once it starts to trail and it does grow fast, it looks just magnificent. It is so easy to fill this out. And these are not hard Hoyas to get. They're quite readily available, although they are popular. So it's just like a little bit higher demand. I see them being sold pretty often, but they usually get picked up pretty quickly. Definitely a plant I recommend for a shelf because it's super low maintenance. It needs some light. It grows well in pond. Light, water, doesn't care about humidity, doesn't care about warmth, and it'll just grow. It just grows really fast. So if you don't like Hoyas because they grow slow, like the compacta grows quite slow, then this is definitely a good one. So this next one I really wanted to include, but it's not really, it's kind of a trailing plant. I don't know, you guys decide. This is Sis Quadrangularis. So I got this plant from Charmaine. This is one of the many plants where I was at her house and then she's like, I'm putting this in your box. You're bringing it home because you need to grow this plant. It's so cool. And I had no objection to this one because I've always admired this plant. I've never seen this for sale other than the one time that Charmaine got it from a Facebook purge. You gotta, I feel like, at least locally where I am, you need to know somebody who collects like funky and weird plants. And that person, there's always that one person in the plant group that collects kind of like the oddballs. That person is the one you have to find this plant from. But I've never seen them like in a plant shop. I've never seen them in nurseries. Not that I've been searching for it, but I've never come across it. I feel like it might also be one of those plants where it's like very commonly found in Europe and it's not very common here. But this plant has been so freaking easy. She gave it to me, I think, lightly rooted. It was either unrooted or lightly rooted, and I potted it in pond. It's just, yeah, in my regular pond mix, which is mixed with perlite and orchiata. It's probably ready for a repot. And well, you won't be able to see the roots because it's very algae ridden. I think it was like this section here, and maybe on this one it was like this and this. So all of this has grown in my care, all of this has grown in my care, and it's currently working on This little darling. So the reason why I'm hesitant to put it as a trailing plant is that it can kind of grow upwards and it kind of goes downwards when it feels like it, but it's like such a wonderful plant to see on a shelf because of this like cool zigzaggy pattern that it does. So first of all, the shape of the plant, first of all, the shape of the plant is like a square, but it kind of like swells a bit in the middle, and there's like an indentation here, so it's like super angular. It reminds me a bit of star fruit, and then it grows these tiny little leaves, and it's actually part of the grape family, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, maybe taxonomically I'm not describing it correctly, but it is related to grapes, so it can produce like little grapes, is what I heard. And it's like, it's so fun, and it like zigzags. Like, I love the way that it grows, and then it changes directions and you don't know where it's gonna go, and it's like, it's so much fun, and it grows pretty fast. This plant, I think I got it at the tail end of last year, maybe in the fall. So I've only had it for like maybe 5 or 6 months, and I underwater it a lot, and I know I underwater it when these like little grape leaves start to shrivel off. But I just think if you can get your hands on this plant, it is just so fun to add a bit of structure to your shelf. It looks really great in glass vessels, but it would also look awesome in like nice pottery. And yeah, I really hope that more people get into this plant, because now that I have it, I can't imagine my life without it anymore. This is one of the plants that's on my living room shelf that grows quite quickly, so it gives me excitement to check the shelf a little bit more. Once you want to prune it, if you don't like a section of it and it's growing a little bit crazy, just chop it off and reroot it. It roots really easily in water, and it just like, yeah, it's just very fuss free. I really don't grow cissus. I think this is the only cissus I've ever owned, but this is like a really cool one. Who's calling me? So the last one is not a trailing plant, but I had to include it because I think this is such a cool plant for decoration. I mean, it's just a cool plant in general. It's just a delightful little guy. So if you watch Charmaine's channel, you will have seen this plant before. This is the Dakaria madagascariensis. So Charmaine's plant, my plant, Jing's plant, they all came from the same place. Jing and I bought them from Crystal Star Nursery last year, and it was intended to be for Charmaine's birthday. So we each, like Jing and I each got one, and then we also each got one extra for Charmaine. So she got 2 plants that she potted together, make a nice full pot. It was like her dream plant. And I freaking love this plant. It's very her. So when I see this plant, I'm always reminded of Charmaine. It's spooky, it's weird, it's little, and it's like a little sharp around the edges, and it's a little jaggedy, but it's very cute at the same time. And it's been growing actually in this room, literally like right here where the window is. It's right on the windowsill. It was about here-ish when I got it from Crystal Star, and this was, I think, back in the fall of last year. And then it's grown all of that since, and then it's working on some growth here. It's potted in the substrate that they sent it to me in, so it's a very gritty, rocky soil mix, but it's like very low in organic matter. It's like a lot of rocks, and it's potted no drainage. There's a leca layer at the bottom. I water it maybe about once every 2 weeks or so. I noticed that it needs a little bit more water than a lot of my desert plants. So if I'm behind on the watering, what I'll notice is that these little leaves will just shrivel off and die. So in order to maintain these cute little leaves, I gotta make sure that I keep on top of the watering, but it does take water. It's one of the desert plants that I'm not super afraid of rotting. And so far it's been like very, very low maintenance, and it's been growing really nicely. It definitely calls for a nice pot, and it definitely needs light, but it will look so good in and amongst other objects that are not plants. I don't think this would look good surrounded by a ton of other plants. I think it would get lost really, really easily. You need some negative space around it to make sure that it stands out. But look how cute it looks. Just the growth pattern of it is like a ballerina. And just that zigzag pattern. It has a little spike at each joint. So I think it shouldn't be long before it's like a bigger plant. So maybe I'll give you guys an update in 6 months or so, when this is a little bit bigger. I have very high hopes for what it'll do in the summertime when this window gets a lot more light and a lot more heat. But yeah, it's like such a great plant. I fully understand why Charmaine was so obsessed with it. I mean, I've always liked it. I've always thought it was really cool. If I had seen this in a shop, I would definitely be picking it up. But I'm not like a spooky kind of girl, so I wasn't obsessed with it the way she was. But now that we both have it, I feel so much love for this plant. So fully understand why she was so obsessed with it, because I am now super obsessed with it. This lighting is so much better than when I started. I should have waited to start filming. All right, guys, that concludes my list of my favorite fun trailing plants. Let me know if there's any funky ones that I'm missing. If you're in Europe, let me know if there are cooler Ripsalis that I need to be keeping an eye on, especially if we try to import some. I haven't done a ton of research into Ripsalis, but after growing these ones, I'm really interested in growing more. And again, sorry about the really short video. This week is bonkers crazy for me, and then I think the next week as well, I will hopefully share with you some updates in like a future repot. But there's a lot of things happening in my personal life that are causing me to be really busy, but it's good stuff. So I'm hopefully, once things settle down, we'll be able to do a nice repot. I also called for questions on my Instagram for like a repot, but if you responded to that with a question, I will be getting to it. I just don't have time to film that kind of video, because if you don't know already, those videos are the most time consuming to make and also edit, for me at least. They are the most labor intensive videos that I have to film, so please bear with me while I work through some stuff. It's not bad stuff, it's not tragic stuff, don't worry. It's just very stressful, but in a good way. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I hope you have a lovely rest of the weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Mwah.